On his 17th birthday, the young heir prepares for his coming-of-age ceremony and reflects on the fact that for the first time in all these years he is officially entering adulthood. Meanwhile, Yuto, the third son of the Muscoil family, is irritated by the arrogance of the aristocrats who are forcing a girl to participate in a puberty ceremony, and when he calls someone inside, he notices an instant submissive response. After this, the maid quickly points out to Yuto that he should push the door, not pull it, as it won't budge. He nervously wonders if it's broken, and at that very moment, he hears a sudden scream. Then Ralph deftly intercepts Alicia as she stumbles, noting her trembling reaction and assessing her condition with restrained concern. Meanwhile, Oxo harshly calls Yuto dissolute and reproaches him for being spoiled, claiming that it is still too early for him to think about such things, and the young man himself is excitedly thinking about the upcoming night. Ralph, upside down, declares that Yuto should treat him like a mentor, while Yuto himself remembers that even the older Alka treats him like a child, and mentally notes that the 19-year-old looks more like a teenager. Afterwards, Janes congratulates him and asks about his nerves, and Nanos warns him not to fail, hinting that otherwise it will become the greatest regret of his life. Daimon, the head of the Muscoil family, then reassures Yuto that he can handle it, as his common sense and manners are rare in a 17-year-old. He then reminds the youth of his previous instructions. Ralph firmly states that he does not need any hints and does not have to know his partner in advance, promising to fulfill his duty, while his table neighbor suggests that since he is the third, he will probably get a servant, recalling his own ceremony. Ralph mentally assumes his interlocutor is an irritated schoolboy and guesses that this is the first time he has found himself in such a situation, while the other man explains that having a maid used to make things easier, and the woman next to him thanks Janes for her support. The white-haired heir complains about the difficulties of the firstborn, and the dark-haired observer finds his manners intolerable. Then another participant chides Nanos for his frivolity at such an important moment. After this, the man in military uniform passionately reminds them that, in time, each of them will have to defend their family, their country, and the entire world, emphasizing the centuries-old duty of the Muscoil family. Farlet dismisses his father's excessive concern, believing that such tasks should be entrusted to someone with a rare gift, while Ralph insists that the power of the nobility should serve the people, recalling noblesse oblige's expression as the last one before awakening. Later, the man holds the newborn in his arms, and the woman smiles nearby. The child gradually grows without a clear purpose, exhausted by classes and studies, and increasingly looks out the window with indifference. Yuto sarcastically challenges the blonde man, who demands to know what constitutes failure, then leaves in a huff. Later, the elder approves of Yuto's behavior, and he is suddenly called out by a maid. Soon the young man sits tensely, reflecting that in 17 years he has never come close to such intimacy, and therefore perceives the upcoming ceremony as something excessively serious. He knocks on the door, thinking that the partner is not his choice, and, upon entering after the invitation, he wonders whether it is worth continuing to live strictly according to the whim of his father. The girl hesitantly admits that she was not informed of an important detail, recalling how the head maid told her something while she was sleeping with her eyes open. The young man finds it strange that Oxo does not know about this. Alicia tries to say something, but Ralph irritably calls her a clumsy servant, and at that moment someone announces that they only just now learned about his birthday. Ralph quietly congratulates Alicia, and she hands over the flower she grew, sheepishly apologizing for the modesty of the gift. The young man accepts it with warm gratitude, and the girl's heart flutters with a surge of emotion. Rihanna sheepishly admits that this is all happening for her for the first time and that she was only pretending to understand more than she actually did, while the young man notes Yuto's calmness and maturity, which clearly belies his age. She then hesitantly asks if she is truly suitable to be Yuto-sama's first partner, covering her ears with her hands and turning purple with doubt and excitement. After this, he gently explains that he is glad to see her nearby, because with this girl he has the only truly relaxed relationship, which makes her blush even more and unexpectedly say his name. Then Rihanna and Ralph are caught up in a passionate kiss. She blinks in confusion, and he confidently wraps his arms around her waist, holding her fragile figure and continuing to press her to him, allowing tenderness to fill the air. After this, Yuto leans closer, declaring that he does not intend to stop there, and, hearing her timid confession about her first kiss, asks her to stick out her tongue. The girl blushes deeply and looks away. Meanwhile, Ralph picks up the unconscious Miranda, asking about her condition, then carefully sits her up while she, shaking, clings to his clothes, still not having recovered. Rihanna, nestled between Yuto's legs on the bed, admits she's never heard of such intimate acts and feels her head filling with fog, while he calmly notes the difference in local perceptions. she then asks him to ignore it and tries to control her breathing. She then timidly turns to Yuto-sama, admitting that she was specifically instructed to take care of him, and blushes again, unable to find the right words. Ralph and Farlette share a quiet kiss. She softly calls his name and admits that she expected more fear, but found restrained strength in him. He asks how she feels after everything. The girl says that she is happy to be his first, while the young man himself feels relieved, but understands that the same routine awaits him ahead, despite such a pleasant outcome. After this, Ralph activates Noblesse Oblige, and the ability begins to copy prediction, transforming into prophecy. The boy is shocked by what is happening, and Alicia is sleeping peacefully nearby. A moment later, tense and sweaty, he wonders if Noblesse Oblige is really connected to the divination, while Alicia, lying behind him, sleepily asks what happened. He then activates the prophecy by putting on his shirt, and suddenly notices someone's hidden presence. The young man realizes that the abilities are triggered whenever he just thinks about them. Afterwards, he analyzes the new skill and realizes that prophecy is an advanced form of the divination skill created through the influence of Noblesse Oblige. Yuto is surprised when a group of formally dressed people approaches him, with a maid standing behind him. One inquires about his condition, and the youth replies that everything is fine, while the other turns his attention to Oxo. The maid, with noticeable excitement, asserts that Yuto-sama is quite capable and reliable, causing one man to sigh heavily and the other to ask if what she did was enough. Then, a girl hurriedly calls out to Yuto-sama, but he remains silent. Another, stunned, finds herself grabbed by the wrist as the boy demands that she be the next one to spend time with him. Afterwards, the young man asks his father to appoint Oxo as his personal servant in honor of his birthday, astonishing everyone present. His father agrees, and the young man reminds Nanos that he must first ask his permission before approaching Oxo. The young man confidently presses the girl to himself, claiming his right to her. She blushes and says his name, while the other participant invites her to rest in the room, and she responds timidly. Then the young man tells his father that he wants to go out for a while, and he, with a heavy sigh and calling his son by name, nevertheless allows him to leave. In bustling Rosterfi, a dark-haired young man slowly makes his way through the dense stream of people and reflects that even if the prophecy gives only a tiny hint, the outcome always leads to the same thing, but that is still enough for him. He then decides to find the answer himself and confidently announces his intention to visit the brothel, despite his companion's surprise. He then asks to be escorted and, upon reaching the entrance, asks if this is indeed the right place. Opening the door, he freezes when he sees 5 girls, Miranda, Alicia, Rihanna, Celine and Farlette, standing in a row and smiling welcomingly, while he himself remains a little to the side, watching them. A little later, the hostess, with a pipe, slowly greets the newcomer, learning his family name, and the young man calmly confirms that she is familiar with both him and his father, to which she responds with a friendly smile. Then he reports that it was here that his companion's father went through the rite of passage, which is surprising, and adds that he himself has already completed the ceremony, but still wants to experience this path again. After this, one man boastfully promises to bring the best girl, but the dark-haired young man firmly replies that he is looking for something completely different, causing the worker at the counter to be amazed at his determination. Meanwhile, a woman in a cloak grumbles about men, and a terrified customer calls for help. 2 onlookers discuss how Parthenos has scared off the customers again, though one of them declares that he still wants her. The young man calmly clarifies that he is looking for a specific person, while someone behind the scenes is indignant about why the clients have stopped paying attention to the other girls. Then 3 guys surround the young man. One warns him to be careful, because that same girl might hear, and the other shouts out a question about his sanity. Meanwhile, Rihanna feels rejected and wonders why no one chooses her, even though 2 men admire her elven beauty. A dark-haired stranger comes closer, and she turns around in surprise. Then Ralph confidently takes a step, declaring his choice of Parthenos, and Alicia is amazed at his courage, while the crowd nearby also reacts in complete surprise. A girl with long white hair recalls living as a spectacle on display in a confined space, then notes that she studied erotic practices and came here only to earn money for her own freedom. After this, Farlette reflects that the locals are running away in fear from the elves before she has time to apply the accumulated knowledge, and 2 guests are watching her anxiously from the side. Ralph enters a simple wooden room, noting that this is exactly what a brothel in another world looks like, and the woman behind him looks at him with genuine interest. At this point, the girl accuses Yuto of lying about his age and demands to know if he has tried alcohol, while he nervously insists that he is 17 years old. After this, she blushes from a sudden, too passionate kiss, and the young man assumes that she must be in a playful mood or drunk, advises her to return home and quickly runs away, thinking about the hard lot of elves. Meanwhile, the angry man yells at the elf, demanding her leave, and the observer calls for the guards. The dark-haired boy notes to himself that he does not want to be like such a pathetic fellow. Ralph then orders Alicia to leave the place immediately, explaining that it would be extremely stupid to stay there. She is surprised, and he notes that this is perhaps the most absurd moment during his entire stay in the New World. After this, he bitterly thinks that, out of fear of curses, someone managed to neglect such a beautiful girl, and she blushes, feeling both shyness and excitement. Finally, Farlet gives Parthenos a prognosis, predicting that the man who insulted her will never appear near her again, and Parthenos reacts with genuine surprise. Ralph first checks to see if the victim is alright, while Farlet coldly remarks that it's his own fault and orders him taken to a doctor. Afterward, Alicia notices a flower floating nearby and is amazed by its appearance. Then the young man confidently hands over the flower, confirming his guess, and the girl blushes to the tips of her ears, feeling her heart beating faster than usual. After this, Farlet activates Noblesse Oblige's advanced ability, clairvoyance, and Ralph watches her with attention, assuming that this is how the true power of prophecy manifests itself, while she reacts emotionally to the skill's effect. Meanwhile, Parthenos adjusts his collar and turns around, noticing the silver-haired girl sitting on the bed. She asks what is troubling him, looking at his reserved expression. She then sheepishly admits that she feels a little dizzy and hopes that he will come again, but he calmly informs her that he will not appear in this place again, leaving her in silent shock. After this, he quickly asks Parthenos to follow him, surprising her, then opens the door and asks the workers where the owner of the establishment is, and the girl walks behind, trying to grasp the meaning of what is happening. The young man explains that he intends to hire this woman officially and plans to discuss everything with his father, and the confident hostess confirms her participation. The silver-haired woman watches silently, trying to comprehend her new role. Then she doubts whether she is worthy of the happiness she is experiencing, clutching a small object, tears streaming down her cheeks, and he warns her that the new job will be much more difficult than the previous one. After this, he confidently declares that over time she will become a part of his life, and the girl, nodding shyly, accepts the idea that she is ready to follow any of his orders. Meanwhile, one man asks him with disbelief if he really intends to hire an elf slave, and the young man confirms that this is only one of the reasons, then asks to borrow the letter for the next step. He then uses clairvoyance to read the address to His Majesty Rennie, discovering inside information about a future expedition planned for the following year. After this, the fair-haired interlocutor explains that he himself received clairvoyance after intimacy with a woman, which causes surprise, and then examines a small object, as if trying to understand the intricacy of the mechanism. Meanwhile, the young man clarifies that every time he enters into a relationship with someone, he copies and develops her abilities, and the blonde listens silently, admitting that he does not fully understand the meaning of such a phenomenon. Then Ralph, standing at the table and scratching his head, explains that he wants to make it clear that he cares about those with whom he is associated, and the interlocutor attentively accepts this position without unnecessary comments. After this, the man in the long cloak allows up to 3 people to be brought in and assures them that he will provide them with any support, while simultaneously offering to gather more information about this strange ability. Walking down the corridor, the young man thinks that it would be nice to get help from Damon, his father, and then calls upon a new prophetic skill, realizing that it points to the next owner of the necessary talents. He then firmly decides to follow the skill's instructions, believing that the prophecy will direct him to where he can gain new abilities and clearly see the path ahead. After this, he watches Farlet, sleeping peacefully in the master's room, and reflects that, despite the prohibitions, it was with her that the whole chain of changes began, which turned his previous life upside down. Meanwhile, he calls out to Oxo, causing her to flinch, then calms her down when she apologizes for sleeping, and the girl inquires about the fate of the bespectacled man, remembering the other maid. Farlet then joyfully shows off the drawing and announces that Alice has replied to her letter. Ralph suggests that the girl in glasses might be a relative and, after inquiring about her condition, surprises Farlet with this guess. Alice excitedly shows him the first letter she wrote herself, and Ralph can't help but marvel at her effort. She then carefully rereads the reply, humming softly, but soon frowns, trying to figure out what exactly is bothering her. Then Rihanna, unable to hold back her tears, tells Yuto that her sister was sold, and outside the majestic building, she pleadingly asks what she should do now. After this, the young man, with a gentle gesture, tries to calm Oxo, who is worried about what hands her relative might have fallen into, fearing the worst possible outcome. Meanwhile, he ponders the prophetic illusion, realizing he needs Alice, and recalls instances when farmers are forced to sell their children during famine. He pulls the girl closer, assuring her that nothing bad will happen, and pushes himself to speed up his search. Then Ralph quickly examines the building, realizing that she is not there, and explains to the fair-haired man that the intermediary was a certain Galamos. It was he who arranged the purchase of Alice. After this, he is amazed to hear from Farlet that the main clients are considered to be people with perverted inclinations who prefer to break the will of others, and the maid behind him asks in bewilderment what break means. Meanwhile, Janice explains that many of the shops are registered under fictitious names, and the young man confidently declares that he will check each one personally, while Alice watches from the sidelines, pondering what he's heard. Then Janice suddenly gives him a kick, entrusting him with the care of Oxo, which startles the young man. Then Yuto stops in a narrow, empty corridor, catching his breath in irritation and realizing that this place can hardly be called a store, and the person he needs is definitely not here. After this, he notices the sign of the sun on the door, kicks it down with all his might, and finds only a dead end, guessing that there must be a hidden passage somewhere nearby. Then Ralph decides to use clairvoyance to find his way back, notices a faint magical trace and confidently points the direction, starting to move forward. Meanwhile, Yuto introduces himself as a son of the Muscuri clan, and the two men ask him in confusion if he is lost. Then one asks if he is Galamos, and the young man confirms this. Then the dark-haired guy openly declares his desire to ransom the girl from the village of Hyde, and the mustachioed merchant animatedly asks how he can help him. The man with the mustache says that her name is Alice, and the young man indifferently accepts the fact that he is discussing someone else's business, assuming that the purchase is possible with the right amount. The dark-haired guy then reacts with shock to the merchant's words, learning that the deal had already been completed and that the transfer had taken place approximately 10 minutes ago. After this, he reflects that the best merchants are considered to be only those who behave honestly, but the mustachioed merchant refuses to disclose the buyer's details and suggests changing the wording of the question. Meanwhile, the young man inquires whether the establishment inspects goods after the transaction, and the merchant nervously confirms the existence of such a practice, adding that there is indeed a place downstairs for such purposes. Then he asks about the cellar, and the merchant reluctantly admits its existence. The young man, thanking him for his sincerity and prudence, rises to his feet, preparing to move on. Afterwards, the master sharply reprimands his subordinates for their absent-mindedness, and one of the men admits that Shin's ability to quickly orient himself is impressive, adding a warning: Yuto Muscuri is clearly not someone to be underestimated. Then the dark-haired young man calls someone a disgusting person and suddenly rushes forward with a drawn blade, while the other man demands to know who he is. After this, the young man introduces himself to Yuto and says that he came at the request of the sister of the wanted girl, while simultaneously holding back the calm girl, who asks if she is injured and who she ran into. He realizes that she was sent here by his sister, and after a short pause, he suggests leaving the room immediately, as he senses a stranger approaching from behind. Ralph then grabs the girl in his arms and quickly rushes past the two men, while the others examine the wounded man and ask where the captive ran. He then notices that the pursuers have arrived too late, as the culprit and the girl have already disappeared. Meanwhile, the man with the tail remarks on Galamos's exceptional qualities as a merchant, while Galamos himself stands nearby, calmly holding the bespectacled girl in his arms. After this, Rihanna, without holding back her emotions, thanks Yuto, and Alice remains calm, although the maid in uniform hugs her tightly. Then Ralph carefully wipes the tears from the girl's face, and she barely audibly agrees, and Miranda reminds her to express her gratitude to Yuto, who is going to take her into his service. After this, Alice suddenly declares that she hates Yuto and does not want to work here, while the two joyful girls celebrate their reunion, and one of them calls out to the newcomer in surprise. Meanwhile, the girl in glasses playfully sticks out her tongue, and the other, already irritated, declares that she doesn't like her older sister, and at that moment two boys run in, one of whom demands that she come to her senses. Then Miranda bluntly tells Yuto and his relative that she dislikes both of them, immediately adding that she's finally spoken her mind. Behind her, the others fall silent, stunned. After this, Ralph, ignoring the surprised looks, decides to keep his promise and quickly leaves the room, simultaneously instructing Janice to keep an eye on Oxo, who is sitting nearby. Meanwhile, a young man in a dress uniform furiously demands to know who hit him, accusing his interlocutor of disdain, but the calm owner of glasses silently withstands the pressure. Then Ralph hugs Alicia, protecting her from Nanos's rudeness, and sharply orders him to stop pestering her, as his guest is under his protection. At that moment, someone calls out loudly to Yuto, demanding he stop. After this, he remarks that fate favors the girl, and she, in response, wonders whether such a remark is appropriate, given that she narrowly escaped death, and categorically disagrees with his assessment. Meanwhile, Ralph asks her opinion of the young man she recently bumped into, and hears her describe him as arrogant, unpleasant, and petty, something he silently agrees with. Meanwhile, somewhere nearby, someone violently kicks down a door. Then Ralph admits that the guy is his brother, and the girl with glasses reacts sharply, calling the news the worst possible thing. He then goes outside, musing that Oxo seems wonderful and that he really does like her. After this, one of those present admits that he envies someone who has a caring relative, and then falls silent for a moment, recalling a line from the letter that spoke of her work in this place. Meanwhile, the young man notices that she constantly mentions only Yuto, and the girl irritably explains that this is precisely why she feels hostility towards Yuto and her older sister, asking if he knows about it. Then he tells the man next to him that whenever he tries to talk to her, she switches exclusively to topics related to himself, and she, sitting nearby, is immersed in her thoughts, while light petals swirl around her. After this, he admits that she was indeed sent by his sister and asks her not to hurt Oxo, despite any old grudges. The girl gently replies that she has long understood that he sincerely cares for the servant. He then muses that if she really is the one mentioned in the prophecy, she must have a special gift, but decides not to interfere for now, watching as the two girls share a quiet, warm embrace. After this, Alice suddenly demands to be immediately held close just like her sister, causing shock to the girl standing next to her, who is trying to understand why Alice has changed her behavior so suddenly. Rihanna is visibly embarrassed when Miranda hints at her connection to Yuto, while he urges her to hurry. Then she admits she doesn't mind at all, as this is what she wanted all along. After this, he confidently notes that she is the one his older relative fell in love with, and therefore is certain that, in time, he too will become attached to her. Then, holding back tears, Rihanna quietly asks her sister to continue to watch her. Meanwhile, Ralph, completely exhausted, reflects on how he's already received 3 skills from different people, while Miranda praises Alice, who looks tired and flushed. At that moment, Nobles Obliges transforms into the refined mastery of the long blade. After this, he freezes in a daze, seeing a combination of the word swordswoman and rebellion, and begins to wonder if this is an omen of an impending catastrophe and what might follow. Then he declares with determination that he has acquired the ability to handle a blade with particular ease and now intends to find a weapon better than the previous one, while his interlocutor nearby tries to understand the meaning of his hints with bewilderment. Ralph then decides not to reveal the questionable information so as not to worry his father, and calmly pushes the topic aside, while the head of the family looks at him silently and intently. After this, he learns from an acquaintance about a master named Balkan, a talented blacksmith who agrees to forge blades only for those he likes, although he himself is known for his difficult character. Then Ralph knocks on the wood-paneled door, and Alicia peers over his shoulder, wondering who exactly lives inside, then admits that he was not obliged to accompany her at all, even though Alice asked him to. Meanwhile, an irritated voice comes from inside, demanding his name, and off to the side, a young man grumbles to himself that even Alice is starting to treat him like a child, but is still forced to go with her because of her concern for Yuto. After this, a broad-shouldered blacksmith appears before them, who asks the young man about his identity, and Yuto calmly identifies himself as a descendant of the Muscuri family, stating a request for the creation of a sword. Then, despite being reproached for his supposed rudeness, Ralph remains standing confidently, and the stern man invites him inside and explains that letters of recommendation rarely reveal the true purpose of the visit. After this, the blacksmith asks why the young man needed a sword, calling it a strange question for someone who claims to be a bladesmith, and the young man only looks at him in confusion, while the girl remains silent nearby. Then the master demands to take the swords and allows him to take as many as he needs, and the dark-haired guy, after hesitating, is forced to acknowledge his debt to Daimon and agrees. After this, the young man remarks that something important once happened between the blacksmith and his father, but he adds in passing that he does not intend to go into details, which surprises the girl. The young man then focuses on verifying the authenticity of the Balkan blades and demonstrates his exquisite skill with the long sword, while the elderly observer silently watches his every move. After this, he begins to disassemble the swords individually, noting their sharpness, difficulty of control, and characteristic tone of power, and admits that it is his new skill that allows him to discern the effectiveness of the weapons, distinguishing them from a ceremonial blade. The young man then asks permission to take one of the swords, and the older man asks if he is sure of his choice, to which he responds with a firm statement that this blade is superior to the others. After this, the blacksmith sitting on the floor admits that the young man was the first to appreciate his genuine masterpiece on the first try, and the boy himself looks at him with a slight, almost curious doubt. Then Ralph and Alicia hear the master's story about how he decided to become a blacksmith after arriving in these lands. Then he opens the hatch and invites them to go down the wooden ladder. And finally, below, the master proudly displays the blade he long sought to create, claiming it is perfect for anyone who can appreciate the true value of a masterpiece. A young man examines it with admiration, while a girl nearby enthusiastically notes the magnificence the blacksmith has achieved. The muscular master, surprised, clarifies the reason for his choice, the girl next to him flinches, and the dark-haired youth calmly notes that the other blade is significantly superior to the sample shown in quality and balance. Then Ralph admits to the clever trick and calls the blacksmith a real scoundrel, to which he laughs heartily, claiming that the guy did not let himself be deceived, because many simpletons fall for only a big name and the beautiful shine of steel. After this, the young man sits down on a tree stump near the camp tent, pondering the peculiarities of nobles' obliges, while his silver-haired companion lies nearby, as if immersed in deep rest. A moment later, he notices that repeated use of the power does not give new sensations, while the sturdy owner of the camp offers to wait out the night at his house, having heard about the guest's intention to spend the night in the fresh air. However, Ralph refuses to soil someone else's bed, causing his interlocutor to laugh and agree, and then asks if Nanos has been here, and receives a remark about how the younger brother is strikingly different from the family heir. Meanwhile, the gray-haired man notes that the elder is an empty-headed bully who only comes because of the name Balkan, and the dark-haired young man calmly replies that he has no time for other people's whims. After this, the tall blacksmith hands the completed blade to Yolito, boastfully claiming to have forged it in one night, and asks who his interlocutor thinks he is. Then Ralph carefully examines the new sword, recognizing it as significantly better than yesterday's, then bows respectfully and promises to use the weapon with dignity, expressing sincere gratitude to the old master. After this, the strong blacksmith advises Yuto to rely on his ability to recognize true quality and use the sword for his father's work, and the young man responds with a short but determined gesture. Ralph and Alicia then arrive at the spacious estate, where Celine greets them warmly and informs them that everyone has been waiting for their return for a long time, and Miranda, timidly, greets her older sister. After this, Farlette happily snuggles up to Ralph, inviting him to rest, while Miranda addresses the unexpected guest more sternly, causing Alice to raise her eyebrows in surprise. Then one of the girls, touched, admits that she has found a friend for the first time, and someone nearby gently reminds her that this friend is also her senior mentor. Ralph then finds himself caught between two of the girls, who insist they will definitely befriend him, while the third one criticizes their haste, and the man with the sword comments on the appalling lack of discipline. Meanwhile, the fair-haired boy boasts about the Balkan blade and mockingly taunts the dark-haired boy, who looks gloomier than usual, while two maids nearby exchange worried glances. Rihanna then quickly clarifies that Yuto's sword was forged personally by Balkan, causing shock to the arrogant opponent, who in a rage draws his weapon and accuses those around him of insolence. After this, Ralph decisively declares that he will no longer allow them to be humiliated, emphasizing that all the girls are under his protection, and three maids line up behind him with different reactions, from concern to surprise. Meanwhile, the young man announces that from now on they all officially serve the House of Muscuri and must first learn to work, after which he asks if they understand the purpose. Then the two new girls quietly confirm what they heard, and he orders Oxo to take them to the head housekeeper, confidently walking ahead and mentally noting the unexpectedness of what happened. After this, the fair-haired man tells the young man that Balkan very rarely agrees to forge swords for individuals, then sighs and remarks that he heard about the recent quarrel with Nanos. Finally, the confident man clarifies how powerful the new blade is, while another man standing behind reflects on how quickly the rumors spread, but consoles himself with the thought that the initiator himself is to blame. Farlette tests Ralph's swordsmanship and notes that his movements have become noticeably more precise, while the young man tells his father there's no need to demonstrate it here. However, his father snaps his fingers, insisting he wanted to see his progress for himself. Yuto then recalls a longsword skill he'd never heard of before, mentioning divination and clairvoyance alongside it. The gray-haired companion admits that all this rare power, including nobles' obliges, seems truly exceptional. After this, Ralph remarks that he himself doesn't really understand the subtleties of the skill, and the gray-haired man merely smirks and suggests continuing on the chosen path. He also admits that he strived to treat all children equally and fairly. Then Farlet says that the present Ralph and thoughts of his future evoke genuine delight, and the young man listens to him attentively in a strict setting, where autumn leaves slowly swirl. Ralph is about to tell his father something important about the prophecy, but their conversation is interrupted by a servant who bursts in with news of trouble in the estate, causing the man standing nearby to ask an alarming question. After this, another servant reports a rebellion that has broken out on their lands, causing confusion among those present, yet another explains that the knights tried to suppress the unrest, but failed. Meanwhile, the knight admires Seal's fighting prowess and asks her not to waver in the heat of battle, confident in the need for decisive action. Then a man demands to know why the wounded man is still alive and why he was not finished off, but the woman insists that extra blood will only make the situation worse and will not eliminate the real cause of the unrest. Celine raises her blade in response, declaring that she is wielding it solely for the sake of justice, while simultaneously extending her hand forward, as if outlining the boundaries of what is permitted. Then Ralph remembers the prophecy mentioning the warrior woman and becomes convinced that the next significant woman must be here. Meanwhile, she announces that their enemy is the cruel aristocrat Daimon Muscuri. After this, Soldier Lucius confidently reports his readiness to suppress the rebellion, while Yuto considers the possibility of negotiations, but the other participant dismisses this, considering talk unnecessary. One of the men takes the initiative and declares that he will deal with the situation and return soon, while the other reasons that forceful suppression will probably be the most practical solution, although he adds a hesitant however. Meanwhile, the young man asks his father for permission to take up the rebellion himself, and the head of the family stands at the window with his arms crossed and evaluates the request with a silent gaze. The father warns that the riots are too dangerous and that the young man does not yet understand how frightening and angry, mindless mob can be. However, Ralph insists that he is ready, reminding him of the abilities he received through nobles' obliges and the new sword, causing one of those present to look at him with hesitation and hidden anxiety. Then the dark-haired youth rushes on horseback, telling his companion that they only have half a day before Lucius' troops arrive, but suddenly notices something suspicious ahead, changing his expression. Two men by the road recognize Yuto Muscuri, and he confirms that he has arrived as a representative of the clan's head, causing a mixture of surprise and wary attention from the group. The crowd whispers that the scale of the problem has been brewing for a long time, but Yuto remains calm and firm, convincing those gathered not to retreat, no matter how much fear weighs on them. He then reflects that the word crowd sounds unnecessarily harsh, and that what is happening seems stranger than expected. The girl next to him is shocked to learn of his origins and status as heir. And finally, the fair-haired rebel confidently asserts that the powerless nobleman is no match for them, while the woman next to him worries about the next steps and doubts that help will actually appear. The dark-haired warrior confidently declares that they have a truly powerful defender of justice on their side, emphasizing that it is this support that can change the outcome of the confrontation. Yuto then introduces himself to Ceres, who reveals that she has dedicated her life to protecting the weak, causing the boy to look at her path with keen interest. After this, he clarifies whether the people behind her are her allies, and the fair-haired fighter confirms his readiness to guard the entire manor courtyard. While tense guards observe the scene, then the young man turns around, assessing the situation. Ralph then realizes that the rebellion did not originate among the inhabitants of Muscuri, but was fueled by outside groups, and begins to think about how exactly he should act next. Soon, the dark-haired opponent asks again if it is really Yuto standing before him, and the armored woman declares that she will not allow anyone to suppress the people by force as long as she lives. After this, Celine demands attention from everyone and vows to correct the rebels' folly, declaring the events over, while Ralph inwardly notes the brevity and directness of her approach. Meanwhile, a warrior with a spear sternly warns that every participant in the rebellion will be executed, and behind him a motley armed detachment is lined up, ready for a clash. Then the dark-haired young man confidently declares that Ceres will become his woman, which leaves her amazed and frozen in embarrassment, while the crowd cautiously draws closer. He again proclaims the death sentence for all rebels and reiterates his claim to Ceres, but she angrily protests, demanding to know if justice even exists among the nobility, while those around her gasp at the audacity of the statement. Ralph privately considers his interlocutor naive and calls him an ignorant youth, while the blonde man next to him reflects on the long suffering of people under the rule of Muscuri and decides to use the current situation for his own purposes. Then Celine engages in combat with Ralph, seeking to demonstrate the strength born from the pain of the people, and he realizes that no matter how many soldiers are sent forward, they immediately retreat under her pressure. After this, Ralph explains that he challenged her to a duel for the sake of a calm conversation, admiring her beautiful technique with a blade, which is why she nervously asks him not to lean so close. The irritated figure demands to know his intentions, but the young man assures her that his sword and sense of honor will not allow the innocent to suffer, and then suddenly asks if she has seen with her own eyes the suffering he speaks of, causing her to hesitate. He then asks her if she has ever personally witnessed the troubles of the province of Muscuri, assuring her that he already understands the actions of the nobility, and the woman momentarily loses confidence, realizing the gap between rumors and reality. After this, he sharply warns that their sublime justice is becoming an instrument in the hands of others, and he himself is surprised by such a sharp conclusion. Ralph calmly drops his sword in defeat, while the armored woman is stunned and the crowd watches the changed course of events with bated breath. He then hurriedly asks if there is a gardener on the estate, and, bowing low, revokes his previous death sentence, showing his determination to rectify the situation. After this, the dark-haired youth says that he intends to get Damon to reduce taxes and labor duties, and the older man adds a promise to send a traveling artist every month at his own expense. The bearded man and his comrades react with stunned expressions, and the two young men exchange wary glances. Meanwhile, the crowd watches Yuto in admiration and asks him to stop, shocked by his decision. Finally, several men warn Sulla not to end things on his own, considering what is happening to be an opportune moment, while another reflects on the fact that he holds the life of a lord's child in his hands and doubts the strength of this heir, preferring to act himself. One of the men declares that trusting the young heir is a futile undertaking, offering his own, supposedly more reliable plan, while the other reminds that this is the manner of any nobility and turns to Ceres for confirmation of their words. After this, the same conspirator comes up with the idea of taking a hostage and demanding a ransom from Daimon, assuring the others that such a move will bring huge profits and turn the rebellion into a resounding victory. Meanwhile, Farlet remains completely calm as a group of men assure him that the terms are acceptable and that they don't need a ransom. One of them even hands him a small token of appreciation. Ralph then passionately explains that justice only exists because the strong are willing to uphold it, and commends the determination of those who stood up for the oppressed. But soon Farlet, as if turning over inside, declares that there is no justice in the world except money, bursting into mad laughter, and Ralph freezes in stunned silence, hearing the desperate swearing of someone nearby. After this, Ralph declares that he has every right to eliminate the liars who insulted his people, and raises his blade, although those around him begin to ridicule him, accusing him of self-confidence. The next second he is thrown back by a heavy blow, and he bitterly reflects that a new sword by itself does not give an instant advantage, especially if the opponent is greatly superior in strength. Then the dark-haired youth realizes that some enemies are invulnerable to a normal blade, and intercepts the kidnapping attempt, forcing the opponents to retreat, which amazes the woman watching nearby. Afterwards, Ralph admires the noble spirit of another fighter who risks himself to protect people, and feels his own inadequacy, watching how the public appreciates this gesture. He then approaches the man with a sword and warns him of the shame that will hang over him if he carries out the murder, as such an act could provoke a bloody coup. After this, Ralph calls for the abandonment of the accumulated hatred towards the nobility, and the girl next to him implores the aristocrats to show honesty and mercy, asking why they so easily turn away from the troubles of others. Then Celine remembers how women are stubbornly limited to the role of submissive mothers, and, feeling an inner challenge, suddenly rushes forward, determined to prove otherwise. At this point, Farlet raises Ralph's morale by advising him not to think about the situation, but the young man suddenly strikes the girl, causing her to scream, and another man off to the side calls on the wise men to finally change the world. The armored woman then declares that she has become a knight to protect what is right, swearing to guard the village alongside Yuto Muscuri, and a stunned crowd watches as the wounded man gasps on the ground. After a minute, one of the men calms the others and promises to hand them over to Muscuri's army, and the white-haired escort explains that these people were only tempted, and the elder peasant apologizes, bowing his head. Afterwards, Ralph thanks Ceres for her presence, claiming that it was thanks to her that no one was hurt, but she calmly and firmly denies his conclusion. He then hesitates, thinking that holding a woman with a cold heart close to him is not to his liking, but still decides to invite Ceres to fight with him, causing her genuine surprise. Meanwhile, the crowd asks why the fight now looks so serious, and the young challenger replies that he wants to meet his opponent at the peak of his strength, seeking a real test. The irritated man then asserts that women should silently obey and care for children, denying them the right to discuss justice, while the confused woman clarifies whether his words are directed specifically at her. Finally, the knight challenges Yuto Muscuri to a duel, wanting to get to know him better and crossblades with him, and the young man accepts the challenge with determination, preparing for a new stage of the fight. The crowd watches the young man's graceful movements, amazed by his technique, while a girl nearby notes the harmony of the duel. After a swift maneuver, he thanks Yuto Muscuri for a worthy confrontation. Ralph then promises to show the same seriousness, but suddenly notices the disappearance of one of the participants, and, instantly tensing, instinctively draws his blade. Meanwhile, the fight becomes even more fierce. One of the fighters notes the speed of his opponent under heavy armor, and the other assures that he is able to speed up, forcing their blades to clash in a tight rhythm. After this, Ralph activates his precognition and claims that he can defeat Yuto Muscuri, as he clearly sees Ceres' next move, feeling confident in his own calculations. However, the next moment he staggers back as the tip rushes towards him. With a deft movement he dodges, causing his opponent to lose his balance, and watches as the sword rises upward. He then thanks his opponent, and she acknowledges that foresight can be a fighting technique. Their firm handshake cements this understanding. After the fight, Yuto greets Muscuri, who admits defeat and the need to start over. Unexpectedly, Yuto kisses him on the cheek, surprising Ceres, who notes his ability to express his feelings. Ralph then calmly stops the swift attack with his palm, surprising Miranda. His companions remind him of the rules of the duel, but he only confirms that he has not yet voiced his own intentions. He soon encounters another participant, puzzled by his behavior, who accuses Ralph of lacking imagination. The young man, embarrassed, allows him to act as he sees fit. After this, Ralph firmly rejects his former role as a woman, explaining that he left that side to protect justice and must be a man, otherwise he will find no point in continuing on his path. He adds that he will not ask her to return to the past for his sake, emphasizing the importance of every manifestation of her character, be it determination or simple gentleness. Meanwhile, she admits to herself that she intends to fight her femininity, preferring a sharpened blade to old clothes, because she never considered herself capable of falling in love. The blonde girl then asks Yuto why he doesn't fight by her side like he promised, while the other one quietly adjusts her glasses, pondering what's happening. After this, Rihanna indignantly protests against the role of a servant in the short uniform, but Miranda pats her thigh with interest, while Alicia and Alice admiringly note the relief of her abs, forcing Rihanna to sternly stop them. Ralph reminds them that armor is out of place in the house and asks them to be patient, but Rihanna dramatically declares her readiness to die, although he assures them that it is temporary, given their numbers. After this, the maids announce their preparations for departure, causing the man's astonishment, who doubts their decision to leave the estate after the suppression of the rebellion. However, another confirms the seriousness of their intentions. Then the dark-haired man confidently agrees, and the blonde officer suggests adding 4 more women to cover the entire house, and the blonde man supports the idea, claiming that a larger number increases the master's power. Meanwhile, Ralph insists on building a villa in the Rothschild quarter and asks if he can transfer the old estate in the southwest of the Muscuri lands, causing genuine shock in his interlocutor. They explain to him that the estate was ravaged by monsters, overgrown without care, deprived of water and food, and the building itself was partially destroyed, making it impossible to stay there. Despite this, Ralph replies that such a state only attracts him. He then assures that he wishes to possess that place in order to gain greater power and protect the life of his beloved, preferring emptiness to any comfort. The fair-haired man notices that the dark-haired youth hasn't looked this inspired in a long time, and then remembers how his rare power of noblesse oblige gave an unexpected result, calling him by that title. After this, the man in the long cloak allows the young traveler to act freely, wherever he goes, to which the young man only nods confidently, accepting his own path. Meanwhile, at the gates of a huge mansion, they are discussing how to calm their mother, and then a covered carriage appears in front of the building. The group waves goodbye when someone announces the start of the road. Celine leads the party and announces that they are heading to their small refuge, while Ralph and the three handmaidens listen intently under the heavy sky. After some time, sitting inside the cart, the young man reminds them that there are still 2 days to the final destination, and the girl with the tail suggests they take a rest and share the snack she has prepared, while the others discuss the convenience of the cart. Then the armored companion suddenly insists that the younger participant also take off her clothes for training, but she noisily refuses, and just at that moment the entire crew is startled by a sudden scream from outside. Ralph and Alicia immediately notice the approaching gang, but the big man warns them to keep a low profile, while the others turn their attention to a merchant train or a noble carriage that is pulled up nearby with many women. Two burly opponents clash with a figure that leaps forward instantly. The next second, one of the brutes lies on the ground, knocked down by a powerful blow, under the watchful eyes of a woman. Meanwhile, the young man assures his opponents that they are merely training for his skill with the indomitable armor, and at that very moment a new wave of attackers rushes towards him, shouting their intention to finish off the target. Ralph parries the blow and sends his opponent into the dust, and the girl next to him explains that her high-level ability dissolves any armor, making attempts to grab her pointless. Then the heavy warrior activates the true perfection of the knight's armor, taking a stable stance and preparing to deliver a decisive blow. Yuto Muscuri rushes forward in his armor, shocking his enemies with his unexpected agility, and the others sadly admit that the enemy group is almost broken, although one enemy still holds out. Nearby, a swordsman demonstrates confident mastery of a long blade, eliciting admiration, while a girl warns not to touch her sister. The man, however, approves of the very fact of duplicating the skill. After this, Ralph clarifies that Alice has not yet revealed the long-bladed art, because the ability needs to be awakened, while two girls are bantering behind, and a man in a formal suit suddenly bursts into the conversation. The companions insist that they were simply passing by and decided to demonstrate their skills in battle, while the man in the top hat bows deeply, explaining that without their intervention they would have perished under the blows of the bandits. Ralph then advises them to move on together for safety, and the mustachioed merchant gladly accepts the offer, while the fair-haired woman hesitates, lost in her thoughts. At night, the fire near the camp dies down, and a dark-haired young man sits wary near the tents, while a blonde rests on a pillow and the other two lie nearby, whispering, while the dull sounds of the forest are heard in the distance. At dawn, Alicia happily points out the mansion that will be their new home, drawing Yuto's attention to the building, barely visible in the distance from the carriage. Soon the travelers arrive at a ruined place, abandoned many years ago. There are no traces of monsters around, and one of their companions explains that this is where they will settle. Finally, he clarifies that these ruins are the remains of a once inhabited estate, which they will have to rebuild, and for now the whole group will spend the night in the cart until the house becomes habitable. Farlet confidently informs Yuto that a trio of skilled maids will take over the cleaning and cooking, while the rest see this as a chance to transform the dilapidated place into a cozy refuge under the supervision of their older sister. After this, the dark-haired owner promises to neutralize all threats around, and the armored companion supports him while he pours a thick liquid from a large barrel around the perimeter. Meanwhile, Ralph surveys the area, noticing monster blood spilled as a deterrent, fresh piles of bones and burnt-out fire pits, assuming that someone was turning the estate into a fortification, and decides to be on guard. He then considers the restoration of the estate, food security, and ways to earn a living, realizing that the first step is to clear the area. At this point, he recalls the prophecy's allusion to a woman possessing the next necessary skill. Soon a girl in a rabbit costume appears, looking at the attractive young man with confusion, and he tries to understand why such a strange traveler has appeared here and whether she is the next figure from the prophecy. She admits that she got lost and separated from her companions, now fearing for her safety and doubting whether it is worth being in such a risky place in the open air. He is then surprised by the presence of his own brother nearby and at the same time suspects that before him is indeed the very woman from the prophecy. The girl is perplexed by how one can live in such chaos, and he replies that the land belongs to him. A few moments later, the girl kisses the young man and offers herself in exchange for a place to stay for the night, and after a short thought, they switch roles, and he admits to himself that this strangely coincided with his desire. Meanwhile, Ralph clenches his hand in determination, and Alicia irritably says that collecting skills will not be an easy task, and indignantly demands to be released, believing that he is deliberately putting her in danger, despite his assurances to the contrary. The girl blames the young man and his companion for the death of her father, looking at them harshly and not hiding her burning desire to achieve justice. Rihanna again blames the dark-haired man for her parents' death, although he claims he doesn't understand the gist of the claims, suggesting they sort it out calmly. Meanwhile, Miranda demands to know his goals and origins. Soon, Yuto declares his intention to become the owner of the estate, and the girl in the bunny costume refuses to reveal her name to the man she considers the target of revenge, while the others watch with tension. Cornelia angrily accuses the heir of the crime, recalling rumors from the surrounding villages and repeating that dangerous people are constantly seen near the estate, which only strengthens her suspicions. Ralph explains that Yuto was merely avenging his father, who was killed by those who once used this estate as a stronghold, and this truth shocks the audience. Then one of the girls asks if this means there are still outsiders living here. The girl in the rabbit costume suggests that if Cornelia's father had died here, it would be their fault, but the interlocutor is indignant and demands proof, believing that they are trying to deceive her. Rihanna is adamant that Yuto is incapable of such a thing, while Miranda is doubtful, and Celine admits that she doesn't fully trust them despite partially agreeing. The young man realizes that Cornelia is the woman from the prophecy, and promises to reveal its meaning, restore justice, and heal her pain, which makes the girl freeze in unexpected excitement. Ralph then asks what she can do, showing distrust, and she responds with a desire to cooperate to dispel suspicions, and states that she will not decide the issue of revenge for others, surprising Miranda with her fortitude. He tells her that she should act as she sees fit, adding that her opinion of him remains hers, and the girl listens silently, containing her internal tension. Celine, having gathered herself, agrees to rest amidst all the chaos, and Ralph assures her that in the morning they will begin the search for her father's killer, sensing that the night hides much more than it seems. Oxo and Seal stand nearby, and the young man, meanwhile, realizes that his ability is strengthened by closeness with women, so he calmly invites them to join him, seeing this as another step in the development of his skill. After this, Oxo calls Seals and another person to come closer, while someone nearby blushes and objects, considering this inappropriate in front of strangers. Meanwhile, Seals categorically rejects Yuto's feelings, claiming that she doesn't like him at all, and he involuntarily freezes in confusion, while a frightened girl timidly peeks out from behind the curtain. Then Celine, breathing heavily, accuses Yuto of debauchery and perversion, and he lies on top of her, exhausted and tense, trying to collect his thoughts. After this, Ralph confidently declares that he is able to fight for 3 days straight thanks to the power of noblesse oblige, while one of his companions worries about tomorrow, and the other carefreely gobbles up sweets, admiring their taste. Meanwhile, Miranda remembers how she used to give herself to people who ignored her requests, and a man nearby notices that he now clearly understands her value, reading girls' emotions much better than before. Rihanna explains that there was another man, clearly insane, who offered to protect her instead of seeking revenge, and in response, the others comment on his handsome face, his overly serious manner, and how, overall, he didn't seem like such a bad option. Then the young man finally asks why she is wearing a bunny costume, admitting that he has long wanted to clarify this, and she explains that such an outfit appeals to most men and is great for dangerous situations. At this moment, Ralph and the two girls simultaneously sense an impending threat. One asks what is happening, the other warns of something evil approaching, and everyone abruptly turns to face the danger. Then Ralph and Alicia stand shoulder to shoulder in front of the huge creature with the disheveled mane and dripping saliva, clutching the bear's head in its paw, and the air before the collision instantly becomes taut like a string. Meanwhile, Rihanna and her armored companion notice a monster standing outside Goriki's house and wonder why the protective barrier isn't working. She then realizes that this is the beast that killed her father, and her companion deduces that Goriki has long been using the place as a refuge. With a sharp blow, the character with tousled hair brings his fist down on the prey, declaring his boredom in handling ordinary animals, and the woman in a suit and bow tie is shocked by such an onslaught. Ralph then activates the indestructible knight armor and loudly demands that everyone back off as a massive figure in spiked armor rushes forward, intent on crushing everything in its path. Meanwhile, Ralph and Alicia watch tensely as the powerful creature heaves the earth with its blow, and one of the men suggests that the creature is only after Cornelia. The girl clings to Ralph, realizing the enemy's strength. Ralph then strikes with his sword, but even the Blademaster's skill cannot break through the stubborn opponent, and the other two are forced to press closer, trying to contain the furious pressure. He attacks again, but despite the master's technique, the enemy does not give in and continues to resist fiercely, forcing Ralph to look for a different approach. The young man then admits that the monster is far superior to him in brute force, and wonders how many more such dangerous enemies are lurking in this world. He soon prepares to strike at the creature's nearly impenetrable skin, noting its phenomenal resilience, while Alicia cautiously confirms that the creature possesses immense power. Meanwhile, Rihanna knocks Farlet down with a swing, and Kimon takes a defensive stance. Cornelia, holding her sword, checks on the girl's condition, only to realize that she is facing the very same monsters that had been roaming the estate. As the moment ends, Ralph lunges forward with a powerful attack, and his opponent prepares a defensive move, wondering if the young man will dodge it, but the tension of the fight only increases. He exhaled heavily, considering that a well-placed blow to the cervical vertebrae could end the fight in his favor, while his massive opponent shouted Gon's name and the rest of the participants in the respite watched from afar. After this, Ralph rushed into the battlefield, apologizing for the delay, and almost immediately ran into something too large, while Alicia consoled Miranda, assuring her that her wound was only a trifle. Meanwhile, Ralph and his two companions stood shoulder to shoulder, swords outstretched and sharply warning not to harm Cornelia, while the disheveled enemy clearly did not expect this and prepared for a decisive attack. Then Ralph angrily declared that he would destroy the creature that had killed his father, and Alicia tried to hold Cornelia back, not understanding why she was rushing forward with desperate determination. After this, Ralph told Alicia to calm down and reminded her that pursuing the enemy at night was too dangerous, emphasizing the importance of recuperating, and she, embarrassed, quietly agreed. Meanwhile, Simon, who called himself a knight, explained that he served as a bodyguard in Cornelia's village. Those around him asked why he was there and whether he was seeking revenge, but he merely remarked on the futility of trying to restrain the young man. After a short pause, he admitted that he had underestimated her tenacity, but still promised not to let Cornelia stain her hands with blood. Then Rihanna confidently declared that she would deal with the monster herself, which made Miranda look at her in surprise, not understanding where such confidence came from. Farlet then announced that he intended to defeat the enemy not only to protect the village, but also to protect the girl herself, asking to be informed of the moment when he would complete his plan. Farlet then demanded an answer to his earlier proposal, which stunned Celine, while the others reacted joyfully, as if anticipating an interesting denouement. Meanwhile, the dark-haired youth asked his kneeling companion to lend him the power of the sword, acknowledging his skill and the importance of his ability for the upcoming fight. He then noted that all the prophecies had come true, and Cornelia had proven to be both the rabbit and the liar of the predictions. The young man added that the monster's weak point was their neck, and suggested attacking with Kimon. After this, Simon agreed and, having given Cornelia a promise to help her with revenge, firmly shook the young man's hand, confirming their alliance for a common goal. Then the dark-haired warrior ordered them to hurry, while the blonde pointed to a bloody trail leading to the village, and the silver-haired companion cautiously asked about the fate of Cornelia's father, causing the blonde to hesitate. Meanwhile, the silver-haired narrator explained that he had gone looking for Rio after his hunt and found his body torn to shreds, while the blonde called out Kimon's name, and the young man listened in complete concentration. Then Celine promised to marry the one who destroyed the monster, whereupon Ralph turned around in amazement, and Alicia called Cornelia. Finally, everyone gathered and moved towards the village she had noticed first.